The votes for all ACC preseason players for football are rolling in. Should NC State have any honorees?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Wednesday show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms, as always, apply. Happy Wednesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. As you see, Kenton is still boots on the ground in Charlotte, day 2 of ACC Kickoff. Very excited for Thursday, which will be day 3 and NC State's portion of the media availability. We're going to continue on the topic. Of course, all the ACC media voters are pouring in their vote. Preseason teams, who's going to be the top quarterback, running back, so on and so forth. So, Kenton, I want to pose the question to you. On the top of your mind, who are some players for NC State that you think probably should deserve some preseason love?
I mean, the first and most obvious is Justin Jolie. We talk about him being one of the best players in the nation at his position. You can't be that and not be one of the best in the conference. That just doesn't make sense. And so he's an obvious guy that I would say no worse than second team. And even if he's not first, I would say who's first team? What other tight end spearheaded their passing game last year in the way that Justin Jolie did? Okay. I don't think that there's a serious argument for him to not be, again, at worst, second team All-ACC. And then when you move beyond him, I would also say Hollywood Smothers is another guy. He was dynamic when used. The usage may not have been there on par with an Isaac Brown or a Watson as well from Louisville. The usage may not have been on par with a Desmond Reed from Pitt. It may not have been there, but when he was used, he was extremely effective. There's not a serious argument for him not being on that list. Defensively, Brandon Cleveland, another guy that I would say is in that space and in that mode of, hey, he's shown up and he's shown out time and time again. Sean Brown, a guy that was on award finalist watch list last year, a guy that was seen as having a spectacular year last year. And I wouldn't even say that the linebacking core was held together by a string of duct tape, but the fact that we appeared to have linebackers last year was by and large due to Sean Brown's magnificence at the position. So I would say that those are the guys that come to mind off the back of my hand that I would say, hey, based on previous experience, this gentleman deserves to be all conference right now.
Offensively, yeah, I think you hit it out of the park. The most obvious two names will be Justin Jolie and Hollywood Smothers. Covered it already with Justin Jolie. That's a top 5 tight end in the country. I'd be absolutely shocked if he's not first team All-ACC for the tight end position. To Kenton's point, name a better tight end then. If he's going to be second team, please explain to me I'm 5 years old that there's a better tight end than Justin Jolie. I don't think you can do it. And that's without red tinted glasses. That's without bias. Turn on the tape, look at the film, look at the numbers from last year, look at him physically, look at his build. There is no other tight end in this conference that is accomplished and ready to go in 2025 as Justin Jolie. So I believe that he should be first team All-ACC in the preseason for the tight end position. And then, Hollywood Smothers. We, of course, as Wolfpack fans, we have a little bit deeper of a knowledge of what he is and what he can be. I think he's going to shock a lot of people on a national scale this year for the Wolfpack as well. Kenton talked about the usage, being that there is no one now ahead of him. There's no Kendrick Raphael. There's no Jordan Waters. We understand that Hollywood Smothers should be the bell cow back. And I think if you kind of, extrapolate some of his numbers from last year, I think he's lining up for a monstrous year here in 2025. So I think Hollywood Smothers would be, maybe second team, because I do think Louisville's got a couple very talented backs. I know Miami's got one as well. We'll see where the cards fall, but Hollywood Smothers will most certainly be getting my vote for first team All-ACC running back. Defensively, I think you hit the obvious two names there as well. Brandon Cleveland, who will be with us as well down in Charlotte on Thursday. I got a lot of questions about his upbringing and, his development as a player at NC State. I think he could be in a real spot to earn maybe third team All-ACC on the defensive line. I think he's shown enough to possibly warrant that. We'll see how the voters lean. Last week, Sean Brown. Yes, Sean Brown stepping into a position that was new to him last year in 2024 and, doing a bang-up job, relatively speaking, in his linebacking position. They struggled for a large part of the year. They were a relative weakness for that defense, but Sean Brown undoubtedly was a bright spot in that.
Yeah, so one more name for NC State before I forget. Jacarius Peak. How could I have forgotten that name, right? In terms of right tackles last year, the only right tackle in the ACC that I would say definitively, there's not a conversation. I'm taking that guy over Jacarius Peak. CC Francis Malinois. That's it. That's it. Anybody else, you may want to have a conversation at best about is he better than Jacarius Peak. That's it. But in terms of on this team, who guys that I would say, hey, that's an easy all-conference performer, we've seen it. It's not like he's transferring in and we have to project, well, he will be this against ACC competition. We have seen up close and impersonal, he puts guys in the seatbelt. He says, hey, you must be this tall to ride this ride. Excellent. You're taller than the amount? Good. Let's go ahead and put this strap over you and sit right here next to me, buddy. He has been phenomenal so far he was phenomenal last year, rather. So I don't see a world where you leave him off. Again, Francis Malinois, he's going to be probably a top 15 pick next year. He's going to be a guy that, that's a different ball game. There's nobody else in the conference that I would say, there's not even a conversation he goes over Pete.
I do think Peak is actually a sneaky good answer. I'd say he's one of the top three guys on this NC State team. Really, nobody's talking about a whole lot. He's in his bag year. He'll be a junior this year. He had one of the better years of all the offensive linemen last year, maybe outside of Zeke Correll. Another guy that's slated for potentially a monstrous year here in 2025. If he does everything that we know that he can, if he really, accelerates his tape as well, I think you could see his name called, of course, walking across that stage for the NFL draft in April as well. Last couple things here. Quarterback, do you suspect it's going to be Cade Klubnik?
Of course, he's going to be the first team guy. I mean, his decision-making took strides last year. It's hard to kind of discuss anybody else as being in the same league of quarterback as him because, again, everybody else you would have to project something or you would have to have a conversation that's a little different in terms of, well, who has what around them and all that type of stuff as opposed to looking at just who produced and who didn't last year.
I think we already touched on running back. It's more than likely to be Isaac Brown of Louisville and then hopefully Hollywood Smothers. Let's go wide receiver now. What are your thoughts there?
Wide receiver, there are a lot of really good guys at wide receiver here. Even though Singleton left Georgia Tech, they've got some guys over there that can absolutely go. Obviously, Florida State bought in a flurry of transfers because they thought that they lacked receiver talent. But all in all, I mean, you look at Clemson's receiver room, Wesco and Williams probably going to be either first or second team guys. I mean, they were absolutely phenomenal last year, and it's kind of hard to kind of vote against those two, especially with Wesco getting a year older, understand the playbook at a deeper level and all those types of things.
When I think of wide receivers in the ACC so far for this year, I think the first name that really comes to mind is Antonio Williams of Clemson. And Clemson brought back pretty much all of their offensive weapons for Cade Klubnik to use here. I suspect that he certainly will, but Antonio Williams, I think, is a name to know on a national scale, and I certainly expect that he will be one of the first couple names for all ACC wide receivers this year. I want to throw out another name that I think you probably hinted at was Malik Rutherford of Georgia Tech. Eric Singleton is gone. I believe he transferred to Auburn, if I'm not mistaken. But Malik Rutherford, don't sleep on him at all. I think he'll more than likely get another one of my votes for all ACC wide receiver. Any other positions that you have some gripes with potentially?
I think that I'm not going to get too wrapped up in preseason hype because at the end of the day, we've seen how that works out, right? Devin Leary, preseason ACC Player of the Year, super banged up, and even before he got banged up, didn't look great. And that's no disrespect to Devin Leary. We, acknowledge how good he was for NC State for the time that he was, but that's a prime example of why I don't get too wrapped up in preseason and get too worked up about it. It is what it is.
All right, now, so moving forward, focusing a little bit more defensively, we're going to touch on the NC State players that potentially might have a breakout season on the defensive side of the ball. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Our Wednesday sponsor is Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head out to the ball game with friends and family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize that you'd much rather be in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Gametime comes into play. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without all the last-minute stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merchandise, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes all of that possible. Gametime makes buying tickets both fast and simple. Prices on the app will actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, tip-off, or kickoff, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes all of the worrying out of buying. Also, are you tired of the endless scrolling to find the best deals? Well, Gametime Zone Deals pick the best seats in the house for you. You don't even have to do the work. Let Gametime take care of that. They also provide the in-app seat views before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect upon arrival. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Middle portion of our Wednesday show, transitioning to the defensive side of the ball for NC State football this fall. Kenton, who are some players on the top of your mind that might be lining up for a breakout season on defense?
Yeah, so in terms of players who are lined up for a breakout season defensively, you know, it's such an interesting kind of situation here because there are those who on paper I'm expecting, hey, let's do something now. Let's kind of make something happen here. But there are those who I'm hearing a lot of buzz about, and I don't think that those two lists have a ton of overlap, which is a little surprising for me. But, you know, on paper, obviously, you're looking at Elijah Groves, Assad Brown Jr. You're looking at two guys highly rated. The physical tools are there. Both of them very long, very rangy, all that good stuff. And Assad Brown is extreme amount of speed and quickness for his size. And, you know, you're obviously looking at a secondary that was decimated by transfers at the last minute. Everything points to, hey, this guy should be doing the thing next year. And so I'm interested in seeing that. Elijah Groves, another guy, highly touted recruit. You know, he looked like a god amongst men or a god amongst boys during his film and all that good stuff. You're kind of waiting for the next one in line. NC State has had linebacking core after linebacking core after linebacking core that was really good. We have a good linebacker, maybe even good linebackers right now, but the entire core has to come along. And so Elijah Groves is a guy that you're looking at in terms of, again, on paper, those are two great candidates to break out.
You mentioned the secondary, and I don't think maybe this is a name that people will expect to hear because we understand that we brought in Brian Nelson from North Texas. He's one of the top corners in the portal. That was a great addition. We know that we kept Devon Marshall. He had a pretty solid season on the other side of Aiden White last year in 2024. But I want to introduce the name Jackson Vick. Jackson Vick had a very strong end of the year last year, had a couple solid games against both ECU and the Dirty Foot Club. I'm very intrigued to see how Jackson Vick will slot into the secondary this year, because if what he put on film at the end of last year, and maybe you do have some new moving pieces, obviously the new defensive coordinator and DJ Elliott, perhaps he might see things that maybe he could have utilized a lot more out of our defense last season. I think Jackson Vick might just fall in that category. So Jackson Vick, for me, that's going to be a name to watch here as fall camp gets going in a couple weeks and very early in the season, like right from go. How much are we going to see him in game one or game two, the first couple weeks of the season? It might kind of project on what he can really do as an impact player in that secondary for the rest of the year.
Yeah, Jackson Vick is a great name here because he's a guy that, I mean, like you said, he came on very strong at the end of last year, and that is a position group that needs the help. That is a position group that if they are going to be good next year, multiple guys, at minimum one or two, have to break out. It's not a question of, oh, can they be good if everybody kind of plays too similar to the level they were at last year? That just can't happen. because the level that a lot of these guys played to last year was not playing. Other than Mr. Nelson, how many of the defensive backs that we still have on the roster right now played a lot of snaps last year, played meaningful snaps last year, did good things last year in terms of and the safety from Georgia State as well? Other than those two, who else has played ball? Who else has played a good amount of ball? So guys will have to take next steps and big leaps next year. It's kind of part and parcel of the gig.
Another name that we've actually yet to see, and it is the name that everybody's been really waiting for, Ronnie Royal. I want to talk about some Ronnie Royal here. He was one of the top 2, I think, recruits of his class. I think Jonathan Taylor was 1, Ronnie Royal was 2 for 2024. Ronnie Royal started to get some buzz, some practice buzz, that is, towards the end of last year. I distinctly remember Coach Dorn mentioning him by name, and there's a couple handfuls of guys that have started to play really well in practice and might be vying for some bowl snaps. I don't think we ended up seeing him much, if at all, but I have been hearing a lot more buzz this spring into the summer, and hopefully we'll see more of it in the fall camp as well. But Ronnie Royal, I think, is in a very interesting position because kind of the same criteria as Jackson Vick. There is a new coordinator. Ronnie Royal is immensely talented. In fact, I've already heard from some players on the team that he's been hitting harder than any other guy back there in the secondary. Kenton, how much do you anticipate that we may or may not see Ronnie Royal in 2025?
Ronnie Royal is in that rare overlap of players who on paper should be breaking out, and we've heard the buzz about him. Let's be very honest here. Ronnie Royal was a guy that I was super high on coming in, and he was part of the reason why we were asking, is this one of the best secondary classes in NC State history? Because he is an absolute dog. He is a guy that if he were 2 inches taller, he would write his way to whatever college he wants to go to or whatever college he wanted to go to coming out of college or coming out of high school. And let me tell you something, him being a thumper, not much of a surprise. Not much of a surprise at all. That guy is he carries a pit bull mentality of see ball, get ball. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to make the play. And he does so with controlled violence. He does so where he's not biting on every fake and thinking every play is his to make. But the plays that are his to make, there's going to be some violent plays made.
With a lot of relative unknowns in the defense, there's many different names that you can introduce as potential breakout. But now it's your time to shine. Get us in the comments. Tell us some names that you think could be breakout candidates on the defensive side of the ball this fall. Coming up next to round out our show, I want to talk very quickly about some potential members in the distant future. More or less, we're going to speak on Memphis and what they're trying to do with the Big 12. Maybe the ACC will get in on that. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple of minutes of our Wednesday show, talking some conference realignment. We've actually done a pretty good job of not touching on this in quite a while. A couple of years ago, it felt like it was every single show of ours, and you get burnt out after a while. But ACC conference potential realignment, I guess I should say. In the news recently, I saw Memphis was rejected by the Big 12 actually for the 3rd time this decade. Memphis had a $200 million proposal to jump from the AAC to a Power 4 conference, which is the Big 12. And the Big 12 said, we're not interested. So, Kenton, I want to pose this question to you. Do you think maybe in the near future, maybe 2020-ish, because we know that's a date to remember as Florida State and Clemson, and now apparently UNC is kind of eyeing other pastures to frolic in. Do you think Memphis is a potential new partner for the ACC?
If Memphis is a new partner for the ACC, you cannot wait. You cannot delay. You cannot play around with this thing. They need to be added immediately. The deal that they were willing to give the Big 12 is the stuff of legends. That is the type of thing. Holy fleece. How did we pull this off? The deal that they proposed to the Big 12 allegedly is they would pay out $350 million. They would not receive any revenue in the first 5 years. And there would be a clause at the 5-year mark where the conference could say, actually, I'm not feeling this, and move on scot-free. I am sorry. What could Memphis possibly be bringing that's so bad? They're not dividing the pie. They're not taking anything away. And you can tell them in 2030, hey, kick rocks, actually, we're good here. And you don't want them for what reason? I would like this explained to me like I'm a 5-year-old if the ACC doesn't at least kick the tires.
Not to mention they're a pretty decent fit, just athletically. Their basketball team is routinely pretty solid. Their football team's had some very solid years of recent as well. In fact, they beat Florida State last year, which is an ACC member. So I do think Memphis is a very interesting proposal. And I'm on your page as well. If the ACC is going to take interest, I think you just go ahead and don't waste any more time. Go ahead and send your feelers out and maybe see if this is a viable option. A couple other schools that I want to float out, because I've seen these schools relatively often in conjunction of maybe conference realignment. There's 3 of them. There's USF, which is South Florida, UCF, which is in Orlando, and UConn. What are your thoughts on those 3?
Yeah, so USF, love me some Byron Brown. It'd be great to get him.
Shout out Byron Brown.
It would be great to get him back home, even if he is in another team's uniform and all that good stuff. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure how that fits. You already have multiple footholds in the state of Florida in terms of having Miami and Florida State there. I'm just not sure the juice is worth the squeeze there. And then outside of those 2, you say UCF and UConn. UCF is already in the Big 12. I wouldn't be willing to pay an early exit fee for the Big 12 or help them with a buyout there. UConn, maybe. I could see it. The basketball side of things, definite positive. You're looking at right away for men's and women's basketball. Hey, we're taking this thing to a whole nother level here. And, in terms of football, football is the driver. I don't think that UConn would necessarily field a competitive team for the ACC right now, but I wouldn't dismiss them having that built up sometime soon.
You said it perfectly. Because football is the driver, I don't know about any of these 3 schools, because USF, respectfully, they're not really moving the needle on the gridiron. Right. UConn, the same, although on the hard court, they absolutely are. Basketball would certainly be the main pull for the UConn Huskies. And UCF are just kind of existing in all 3 of the major sports, baseball, basketball, and football. They're just kind of there. I know they had Scott Frost the first time around, and they claimed to have won a national championship, which was fraudulent, by the way. But Scott Frost is now back at UCF, and it's still just not doing a whole lot of anything. I'm not sure about any of those 3. I'd be much more inclined to take a heavier look at Memphis. But conference realignment is such an interesting topic because things virtually change like by the day. There's a new school floated out for a new conference, and then all the money gets involved. You have deadlines, you have buyouts. It's ridiculous to talk about. But Memphis being rejected by the Big 12 is very interesting because I think there's kind of like this feeling of impending doom for the ACC. And if Florida State and Clemson and UNC are going to move on, what would that mean for the rest of the conference? Would everybody else kind of be let out like a school bus at the end of the year? It's hard to say right now, but I think if the ACC is looking to be proactive instead of reactive, maybe Memphis is worth a look.
Grab Memphis right away. Don't leave $350 million on the table when you can add it. Like what? I mean this very genuinely. What do you have to add by not adding this team?
I agree.
You could argue, well, it'll bring down your total averages and all that good stuff because Memphis fandom isn't there, whatever the case may be, which, by the way, I have not looked at the data and statistics on that, so I could be wrong there. But just for kicks and giggles, we'll assume that. Do you think that whatever the deal is in terms of their perception will lower the conference's value by $70 million per year? Because that's what we're looking at over 5 years, $70 million, an extra shot in the arm to the conference. I don't see how you look at that and go, we're too good for this. I'm turning my nose up. As a conference that is objectively falling behind the Big Ten and the SEC.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Quick one for you on Wednesday, but that will do it for us today. Very exciting day on the horizon for us tomorrow on Thursday. I will join Kenton down in Charlotte for ACC Kickoff. Looking forward to hearing from our 4 NC State Wolfpack players and head coach Dave Doran. We should have a ton of content for you, probably some clips, a lot of shorts, podcasts as well. Should be a great time down there. Very excited to show you all kind of behind-the-scenes look of ACC Kickoff. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. And also be sure to check us out. We're going to be on ESPN Plus tomorrow when NC State is in the main room. So be sure to catch your boys on the telly. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.